Thank you everyone for joining us, the seasonal stars. I don't know why they've asked me, I'm no star, but I am in season. So we will kick off. My name is Shane Delia. I am the chef, what else am I? The chef and owner of Maha Bar and Grill, which is located on Bond Street, 21 Bond Street. We're also about to launch our new venue, which is called St. Catherine's, which is going to be in Cotham Road in Kew, alongside my friend here, Paul Dunlop, who's going to be our head chef. But we're a member of a greater group. We're a member of a group called the Press Club Group, which encompasses the Press Club, Hellenic Republic, PM24, Maha, and now St. Cat's. So we're a little restaurant group headed by two fat wogs, George Columbaris and myself. But what we're doing today, we're talking about seasonal produce, you know, and what's great about the seasons. You know, believe it or not, it's summer in Melbourne. I know it doesn't feel like it's summer in Melbourne, but more feels like spring, which is good because these are actually spring-ish dishes. I'm doing 3 dishes. First one is a barbecued corn, puffed corn, and smoked almond salad with an oyster kataifi. So it's a little oyster wrapped in kataifi pastry with a tomato and sumac foam. Now, I know it sounds a bit fancy, and it probably is a little bit with that foam, but you don't have to do that at home, and we'll show you how to do the rest of the dish without that. You know, the reason I do that is so I can charge you an extra few bucks and send my kids to school. The other dish we're doing is a seared scallop with a spring bean or summer bean tabbouleh with a goat's curd cigar. And it's a really simple, tasty, fresh dish, very healthy. And the last one to finish off is a lavender panna cotta, lavender white chocolate and honey panna cotta with a strawberry and arak granita. So really, really fresh, healthy-ish flavours today. So tomato tea. Basically what tomato tea is this is your finished product of the tomato tea. It's a clear liquid, really beautifully served, chilled just like that, and it's dead easy to make. You get some lovely tomatoes, ripe tomatoes, ones that are overripe are even better, and you just roughly chop them up, get them in a pot, and this is something that, you know, we've been doing for years, but we seem to bring it back every year around, you know, summer and spring, because it's just so fresh, and it's so inviting, and it's so easy to make. You know, and everyone that comes into the restaurant and has this are like, by the time you taste that, they're blown away to see how fresh it is, and they're like, how do you get that freshness of a tomato in this little clear liquid? And, you know, a tomato is, you know, 80% of its water. So as you see that, the tomato juice, that's what you're trying to extract. And what we do is we chop all that up, as I'm doing now. A little bit of Tabasco sauce, because you want a bit of heat in there. Some torn basil leaves. Bit of salt. Some pepper. A little bit more chili. And what we do with that is we blitz it up. Now, I don't want to make a mess of myself, but you stab that up, or you could do this in a food processor. I know that's like watching paint dry. But you blitz all that up until it's totally pureed. You get a little bowl like this, a little strainer, some cloth, and what you do is you tie it up at the end, or you can tie it up with some string at the end. Place it in there, place it over the top, put that puree in there, and then just tie it up and leave it sit in that bowl. What we do at work is we tie it up and we hang it in the fridge so all the gravity pulls that moisture out, and we just put a bowl underneath, and you end up with that. Okay, so you've got this really fresh, beautiful tea. What you can do with that is then freeze it, and you can use it up later, or you could break it up like a little ice, serve it over some scallops or some fresh oysters, and it's beautiful. What we do with it is there's always a little bit of, that's been hung and then it's been strained off, because you do get a little bit of red colour at the bottom. What we've then done with it is we've mixed it all up so that red colour goes through the tomato again. We've put in a pinch of sumac, so to a litre of tomato tea base, we had 40 grams of sumac. You know what sumac is? Okay, sumac is it's a spice, it's a Middle Eastern spice. It actually derives from a berry, and we mix that in with the tomato, and it's got a really lovely acidic flavour, which really enhances that sweetness of the tomato. That goes in there. 14 leaves of gelatin. Okay, so with these, what we do is we soak them in some cold water, just so they go a bit wobbly like gelatin. And then we take that out, squeeze that, heat it gently over a double boiler, so some water, bowl over the top, and melt that in there. Then that gets mixed into the tomato tea with the sumac, and you end up with a jelly, because that sits in the fridge. All right. Then that jelly, just to be a bit chefy, gets put into one of these siphons, soda siphon. Put them in there, fill it halfway, screw it up. You've got a little canister, which it comes with, filled with CO2. That goes in there, that goes in there, it cracks open, and you give it a really big shake. You end up with like a little tomato foam. Alright? And once you put that in your mouth, it just disappears. You get this beautiful tomato, fresh flavour that just dissipates straight away. And it is dead sexy. The salad we're doing with it is a puffed corn and barbecued corn salad. Now, puffed corn's one of those things that is pretty uninspiring. And you see it in some breakfast cereals. It's just there. You see it in breakfast cereals, and it looks good, but it's quite chewy and doesn't have a lot of flavour. I wanted to create a really crunchy texture in this salad. So what we did is we played around a little bit with the corn, and we found that if we shallow fried it in some olive oil, it actually comes up really crispy, and that corn flavour inside really comes out. So we've got some puffed corn, some barbecued corn. Now, we don't have a barbecue here or an open grill, so we couldn't barbecue it, so we've pre-done it. What we've done, whole corn on the cob with the husk on. We've got a big char grill at work. We've just chucked them on there. And what the husk does is it protects the corn, so it chars it, but doesn't burn it and dry it out. So we get a lovely brown sort of burning marks on the outside of the corn, which also steams the corn inside the husk without blackening it too much, so it's inedible. And we just peel it off and cut the corn just straight off the cob. Bit of olive oil in the pan. Our puffed corn. And the great thing about induction, you've got instantaneous heat. You know, when you're at home and you've got your little gas burner, sometimes you're sitting there for ages waiting for the pan to heat up. You know, induction, straight on the pan, hot straight away. Works really well. Okay, so in the salad, our lovely puffed corn, and that's all it needs. Just a couple of minutes in some olive oil, just to help crispen it up. Because this way, it's kind of chewy like styrofoam. This way, it's really crunchy. Okay, so that goes in there. Our barbecued corn, which is really lovely and sweet. It's in season at the moment. It'd be a shame not to use it. A little bit of barbecued corn in there. Some chive battens, which we've just cut into 1-inch pieces. Some shaved red onion. And I'll talk you through our vinaigrette. This is an amazing vinaigrette, okay? I know that anywhere through the market you can buy smoked almonds. All right, what we've done is we smoke our own almonds just because we like to be chefy. So if you don't want to smoke your house out and have everything smelling like smoke and set off your alarm and all that kind of stuff, just buy the almonds. You know, you can just buy them from here. What we then do to make this beautiful vinaigrette, we get a mortar and pestle, we smash the almonds, smoked paprika, a good extra virgin olive oil, and this is the key. You know, with all cooking, with anything, you're only as good as your ingredients. You're only as good as what you've been given. And if you've been given a dodgy vinegar, you're going to end up with a dodgy vinaigrette. Okay, so you need to invest a couple extra bucks. Now, this vinegar is called Forum vinegar. It's a product that comes out of Spain. It's a Cabernet Sauvignon vinegar made the same way, you know, with the same love that you would make a great Cabernet Sauvignon that you're going to sit down and drink. You know, it's that sweet that you could almost drink it. I wouldn't recommend pouring a glass, but it's really sweet. Oak barreled, matured. This is a 8-year. You can buy a 12-year and an 18-year. You know, so, but for making vinaigrettes and stuff like this, the 8 years, very, very, very highly recommended. Diced shallots and our lovely vinaigrette. So that goes in there. Now with the vinaigrette, you can make 1 kilo, 2 kilos, half a kilo, whatever you want to make, and it will keep for months. You know, because the almonds have been cooked, they're smoked. The vinegars and all that have helped preserve them, so they're not going to go rancid. Put them in an airtight container in the fridge. It'll keep for ages. So that's going in there, mixed up. The last component for the dish is the hero, is the oyster. Now, some people don't like oysters, but I guarantee you, for any person who doesn't like an oyster, a cooked oyster wrapped in kataifi pastry, they'll love, because it takes away that texture that some people are opposed to, that sort of soft, slimy-ish texture that we as chefs and most people love. The people who don't like oysters hate it. So this takes that away, and it really replaces it with something that's really interesting, a little bit different, and it also brings the flavour of the oyster down a little bit. but it works great with this salad. Kataifi pastry. So it's a lovely ingredient. It's a shredded wheat. It's a shredded wheat pastry, which is generally used in sweet production. So for baklava, kunefe, and sweet dishes that you'll find in your little Middle Eastern shops on Sydney Road. You see that shredded pastry? That's what it is. Okay. You can buy it frozen, but if you refreeze it and defrost it, it starts to dry out, and it has to be nice and moist like this. And you have to work quickly with it. So if you are going to work with it on a bench, it pays to have a damp tea towel just to place over it, like you would if you were making fresh pasta, just to keep it nice and fresh. Because if, at home, if you've got the window open and it's breezy like it is out here, it'll dry out really quickly and it'll start to snap and break. So what we do is you just pull out strands, because it's like a spider's web in there. So you try to pick out a long strand, something like that, and you just place it out on your chopping board. It is a little bit messy. Now what I've got here is some clarified butter or ghee, and we just, you can be fancy and make it yourself, or you can just buy some. It's a lot easier just to buy it, A brush, some on your brush, and just moisten that kataifi. And don't be shy, because when you cook it, it's all going to come off anyway. So you just want to really give it a nice soak so it's easy to work with and it'll hold around the oyster. Now we've got some lovely Tasmanian oysters. You want to get some large ones, okay, that we've taken out of the shell. And what you do is you just wrap it up. And you want to make sure that it's nicely covered, because any pieces that are exposed, they're going to sort of burn when you cook them. So that's nicely wrapped up like that. Then you place that in the fridge for that butter to solidify and set. So when you cook it, it just doesn't unravel, Now to put it together, you need a deep fryer. We don't have a deep fryer, so we're going to go old school. We've got a pot with olive oil and little spider or strained slotted spoon. You want to get your oil up to about anywhere between 160 and 180 degrees. Anything over that, the oil's going to start burning and it can catch. You want to use something that's not got a high natural fat content. Something like a canola oil or a vegetable oil, or even a peanut oil. Peanut oil's lovely. So this oil is getting up there. Oil's already a little bit hot. Oh, chef, look at that. You can have that, chefy. That'll be right. Bit of salt, oil. So while they're cooking, I'll start to give you a bit of a chat about the next dish. The next dish we're doing is a beautiful, really, really fresh dish, like the first one, with a really interesting salad. And I think that's what spring and summer is all about. It's about simple technique, keeping it fresh, keeping it healthy, and lovely little salads that you can do in advance and are easy to serve. The one we're doing now is a spring bean tabbouleh. So tabbouleh, I call anything a tabbouleh that has burgul, herbs, and olive oil in it. If there's got those primary things, for me, it's tabbouleh. All right, so we'll plate this first dish up, then I'll get cracking on the second one. Hey? So our lovely barbecued corn and smoked almond salad. And this is on our current menu, and it's one of our most popular dishes. Our lovely oyster, which we're putting on a little skewer just because it looks better. Yep. Our tomato foam. Now, doesn't that look sexy? See, before that went on there, I would have charged you $6. Now that it's on there, it's $18. No, but truly, it adds an amazing texture and flavour to the dish. It's something that's really unique, and once you've had it, it's just, you'll get some coming out now. The tomato foam is just amazing. You have a little spoon of it, you can taste it, and it's just gone. And it's freshened your whole palate, ready for that next scoop of salad. And if you kind of eat it in that way, we're having a little bit of foam, a little bit of salad, bite of the oyster, the flavour combination really, really comes together. All right, our next dish. This is a beautiful little salad that's all about what's fresh. And it's harder to cook, it's harder to get flavour out of cold ingredients than it is out of hot ingredients. The flavour profile of something that's raw is a lot different than once it's been cooked. So you really have to understand what you're cooking with, and you have to have fresh ingredients. Because you can write a recipe and say, give me 3 grams or a tablespoon of garlic. But my tablespoon of garlic and your tablespoon of garlic might be 2 different things. Because my tablespoon of garlic is a beautiful garlic that's organically grown from Dad's place, which is amazing. Your one might be this shit one that's been brought in from China, and you need to use 6 cloves to get the flavour of 1. So you have to know your product. And that's what the benefit of coming to a market like this is, where you can actually speak to the guy across the counter and he'll tell you where it's from and tell you how old it is. And it hasn't been sitting in a box for 6 months and it's mouldy and soft. You know, he'll actually tell you this was picked last week from Joe Blow down in Gippsland, and he farms with his wife Teresa, and they've got 4 kids, and this is how amazing it is. You know, so that's the benefit of coming to somewhere like this. So our fevs, now look, all these things, the broad beans and peas, they've been cooked, slightly cooked. You know, the broad beans have been popped, shelled, hot water up to, you know, been boiling salted water up to the boil, and then put into some ice, like you do with all vegetables that you're going to serve cold. Same thing with our peas. You know, they've been lightly cooked. Some shaved radish, which has been put, basically just shaved into a bowl of ice water. So we've got a little Chinese mandolin, shaved it into a bowl of ice water, and that's gone nice and crispy and turned, you know, a little bit translucent. So it gets rid of some of that harshness. Some burgul, which is soaked, or cracked wheat. Now there's different grades of burgul. You can use a fine grade, which you use in stuff like kibbe, or you can use coarse stuff like this, which I prefer in salads. So burgul in there. So a few pumpkin seeds, toasted almonds, some turnips, baby turnips that have just been blanched and cut in quarters, and fresh mint. Now, I never, in our modern kitchen, never chop herbs, because what you end up with, if you've got a lovely white chopping board like this, and you've got a big bunch of herbs, and you're going bang, 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 like all these master chefs who think they're kings, and they're punching, and they're really giving it to it, and you end up with like a green mess on your chopping board, because all the flavour's gone into the chopping board, and all you're left up with here is a carcass of herb, which tastes like compost, because the flavour's here. So it's a lot better to just grab the herb and just quickly tear it, and it's still fresh, and when you eat it, it's still herbaceous, and it's there, and you can smell it. You know, it's not ended up in the board, and it's a lot easier. You know, so some lovely herbs in there. So a bit of that, olive oil, salt and pepper, and some lemon juice. So there you go, salad's made. The other components we're doing for this dish are the scallop, which you want me to cook, don't you? Alright, the scallop. Oh, look at that. If you can get a non-stick pan, use it, because they are easy and they're foolproof. And I'm a fool, so I like things that are foolproof. Bit of olive oil, so a lovely scallop, little bit of salt. Now with scallops, you need a really, with most shellfish and fish, you need a really nice hot pan, because you don't want to stew it. You want to sear it, you still want it a bit pink inside, because if you overcook it, it becomes dry, it becomes rubbery. You want to get a nice sear, golden brown on one side, little knob of butter just to be naughty, and done. As long as it's warm through, doesn't have to be smoking hot, as long as it's just warmed, it's done. So, you can see a bit of heat coming from there. They don't need a lot of salt. And I know people say to me, when I'm doing a demo, you say, you don't need a lot of salt, and then you throw like a bucket in. Well, I like salt. So, you don't want to overload your pan. That's about as much as you want to put in there. Because what happens is the more you put in the pan, the more heat's being drawn out of the pan. And like I said, you end up with that stewed fish, and you want a nice brown piece of scallop. Now, there's no fat in this dish. You know, there's a little bit of olive oil in there, which isn't fat. Some beautiful spring summery components, some lovely textural components, some freshness of the mint, but there's no fat. And you do need a little bit of fat in a dish, otherwise it's boring. So what we've got is we've got a little bit of goat's curd. We're going to mix that with some chopped chives, some lovely diced shallots, and some honey. Now, the honey's going to bring out the sweetness of the cheese, or the sweetness of the goat's curd. Now, it is a big flavour, so you don't want to use a lot of it. Just enough to bring out the sweetness, so like, you know, whatever's on that spoon is plenty. So those scallops are almost done. All I'm doing now is a little bit of butter in there, just to add a little bit of flavour and help them brown up a little bit more. I know that looks very fancy, and it is, because it's made out of a pastry called Tunisian brick, or pate brick, which is, oh, it's gone a bit dry, which is a really thin pastry, which is made in Tunisia, okay? It's similar to, I suppose, what we would have here would be maybe a spring roll pastry. But it's got an amazing flavour, almost, without trying to sound disgusting, it's really earthy, almost tastes like a Hessian bag. You know, like that sort of earthy flavour. What we do with that is we dip it in some of that clarified butter that we used earlier, wrap it around a piece of copper till we end up with a tube, and then it gets put in our deep fryer to get nice and crispy, and we end up with that. So once that's done, that goes into our piping bag, and you have to be very careful, and I've got ugly hands that break everything. So that gets put in there, filled up. Here you go. I serve this as a vegetarian dish without the scallops in the restaurant, and it walks out the door. But I think it just needs that little bit of sweetness that the scallops bring. So little salad, little scallop, cigar on the plate, some olive oil over the top, and I've got some beautiful herb shoots. These are a chickpea shoot, so once the chickpeas have spawned, they produce a little leaf, and it's totally edible, but they don't last very long. They're not huge for flavour, but they look very pretty. So they look good. So that's the dish, okay? Nice little tasty dish. You're getting to have a taste of it now. So, the panna cotta. We're doing a lavender white chocolate and chestnut honey panna cotta with a strawberry and arak granita. So the flavour combination is great. Those of you who aren't familiar with arak is the arak, or sorry, there's two. There's arak, there's raki, and then there's izay. All right. So arak's the king. Panna cotta. Few ingredients: milk, cream. In our one, yogurt, chocolate, and gelatin. So what we do is we bring our milk to the boil with our lavender. And what that's going to do is that heat from that milk is going to release the oils in the lavender. Now, what I like to do is just bruise it a little as it's going in to sort of break the oil cells that are in there and help it infuse a little bit more. Now, generally I'll let that sit for a while. I'll let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes to really permeate that milk and get it really, really full flavoured. And it'll also leach out a little bit of its colour. You know, it's beautiful on my hands, you know. Chocolate. Cream. So cream and yogurt getting mixed together. We'll get that back up to the boil. Our gelatin. Now with gelatin, all you want to do, you want to soak it in some cold water so it just sort of rehydrates a little bit. If you do it in hot water, what's going to happen is it's going to start to dissolve. And you don't want it to dissolve until it's actually hit the cream. Because if it starts dissolving in here, you're going to lose all that gelatin that you're trying to actually set the panna cotta with. So you let that sit for a while, it'll break down, it'll get soft. And all you do is just squeeze it out. And you don't need to boil it, because as you boil it, it starts to actually break down the structure of the gelatin. And it does burn quite easily. Anyway, so see that's nice and soft now? We're just going to wring that out. Keep that aside. That heat from that milk will melt our chocolate. Hopefully. Yep, it is. And when that's totally mixed up, now would be the time you would want to remove that lavender if you didn't want those pieces in there. But I don't really care if they're in there or not. You know, I don't mind biting into a piece. It's a bit of a surprise. So that goes in there. Gelatin goes in. The residual heat in there will melt that gelatin. And you really want to make sure that that gelatin's mixed through, because there's nothing worse than when you get a dessert and there's pieces of gelatin set on the bottom. It's disgusting. It's just, that's laziness from the chef. So you really want to give it a bit of a hard time. Make sure it's all mixed through properly. Our yogurt and cream. Mix through. Now I haven't put any sugar in there at all. The sweetness is coming from that chocolate, and there's plenty of it in there. And a spoon of our honey. So you mix that through. And then just pour it in whatever moulds you want. Without dirt in them would be good. So that goes in there. And then that goes in the fridge until it's set. So With this one, we're doing the granita though. Have we got that granita here? All right. To make the granita, easy as hell. You can do one of two things. You can buy a strawberry puree, which is nothing wrong with it. You can buy an imported strawberry puree. There's one called Byron, which is an amazing French puree. I'm sure there's some locally produced ones. Or when strawberries are fresh, like they are now, you can just make it. You just grab the strawberries, put them in a blender, blitz them up. You can sweeten them if you need to with a little bit of sugar. Done. Strawberry puree. You can just strain it to get rid of the seeds if you want to, or don't. Going to get mixed with sugar, arak, and that's going to make a sugar syrup. That's going to boil up, if it went on, and basically it's going to come up to the boil. Once it's up to the boil, it's done. Then you add your strawberry puree in there. We mix that up, bring it to the boil. Now what that does is you need that sugar and that alcohol in there, because we're going to freeze this and make a granita. And if you haven't got the sugar in there, it's going to the alcohol in there is going to freeze like a block. The alcohol will stop it from freezing. So as the benefit of the flavour, you've also got that element of the sugar will help it not freeze to the point where it's frozen, but it'll give it a bit of elasticity, like you can see when you have the granita, the frozen product. It's sort of sticky. That's from the sugar, and that's what you want. You want this really beautiful, soft, crunchy, icy granita. All right, so my glass thing, once that glass goes in the fridge and it's set, then you then fill the glass with, like I'd say, all the way to the top with that granita. So you got this beautiful glass, white on the bottom, granita on the top, and then just slowly get into it. It's a lovely little summery dessert. If you had this in the freezer, well, you can use ouzo if you want to be Greek, but arak's a lot better. Look, if you want to be cheap, because ouzo's cheap, you can use the ouzo. But a little bit of this strawberry and arak granita on some fresh watermelon, really beautiful. And you don't have to work too hard with desserts, especially in summer and spring. You can't be bothered. You've had a beautiful lunch. You don't have to then go and bake a cake or make a souffle. It's not about that. It's about using what's fresh. And in summer, we're doing at the moment beautifully chopped up peaches with a little saffron jelly and some mint and toasted almonds on top. It's easy stuff, but it's great because it's fresh and it's what spring and summer is about. So that's all I have to say. I think we're done. We've done our 3 dishes. Right on the money. Good timing.